सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Macrosutra. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor at ThePrint, and this time we're actually going to look at something very interesting that the data is showing us about India's industrial and manufacturing output. Now we talk a lot about Make in India and the government is pushing it quite hard, but the official data is showing something very puzzling. This comes out from an analysis that Radhika Pandey, Associate Professor at NIPFP, has done. And what she's found is basically that in a lot of sectors, our production right now seems to be actually lower than it was in 2011-12. But it doesn't make sense. These are a lot of sectors that actually should be seeing a lot of growth. Things like toothpaste, television, you can't imagine that production in these would actually fall. So we're going to examine the data and we're going to see all of these puzzling things on this episode. Thank you so much, Radhika, for joining us.
Thank you, Sharad.
So now, Radhika, we'll start with just looking at the current data compared to last year.
Right.
And then we'll look at what it says about, a longer time frame. So what does the latest IIP data say for output as compared to last year?
Yeah, so the latest data is for the month of August. And it presents a very encouraging picture of industrial performance. So according to the Index of Industrial Production, which is the gauge of industrial production in the country,
Right.
It posted a growth of 10.3% in August, which is a jump from 6% that we saw in July.
Right.
And encouragingly, this growth is broad-based. So if we look at the components of IIP, there are two ways of classifying the IIP series. One is we look at the economic activity,
Right.
and there we look at three sectors. We look at mining, manufacturing, and electricity. Now, all these three sectors have done well. Manufacturing, which is the important segment, and it has a weight of more than 77% in the overall IIP.
Right.
It has posted a growth of more than 9%, which is very good, which is very encouraging. Also, from the use-based classification, use-based consists of primary goods production,
Right.
intermediate goods production, capital goods production, infrastructure and construction, and consumer goods.
Right.
Now, all these have done well in August. The most encouraging performance we see is for the infrastructure, which is understandable given the government's infra push. So we have seen that the infrastructure and construction index of IIP posted a growth of 14%.
Right.
So overall, we see that there is a very good performance of industrial production, and this has taken place as compared to last year. Last year around this time, we were seeing that IIP was contraction.
Yes.
So a part of it is also driven by a lower base, but what is also equally important is that when we see month-on-month growth rate, which does not include the confounding effects of the base,
Right.
then also we see a positive growth. We see
excellent.
month-on-month growth is also showing more than 1.5% growth, and again it's a broad-based growth. So overall, if we look at the headline numbers and if we look at the segments of IIP, we see that in August, the IIP presented a very good picture of the production prospects of the economy.
Right. Now, apart from measuring the IIP compared to last year, you also looked at it as compared to the base year.
Right.
Now, for people who don't understand the base year, each of these indices, whether it's the IIP or the CPI or the WPI, they take a base year and all subsequent data is measured according to that base. So, the base year is important. And for the IIP, the base year is 2011-12.
Right.
And so Radhika has looked at the output levels in actual terms compared to the base year. Now, could you tell us first a little more about how you did the analysis?
So that's a very detailed analysis of data, and my colleague Pramod Sinha and I, we did a detailed analysis of looking at manufacturing sector.
Right.
And within the manufacturing sector, we know that there are 405 items.
Okay.
So within the manufacturing sector, there are 405 items which are grouped across 23 categories.
Okay.
So there are 23 categories and 405 items in the manufacturing sector.
Right.
So we compare the index value, or in other words, so what is also important is that the index value is only available for the broad category. When we go deeper, like
Right.
when we say manufacture of chemical and chemical products, within that there are items like paints and varnishes. They are not expressed as index numbers.
I see.
They are either expressed in terms of their physical units like tons, or they are expressed in nominal terms like rupees million or
I
so
see.
on.
Okay.
So what we did was that we not only looked at the 23 broad categories, but we also looked at the subcomponents within the, say, chemicals, what are the items, and where we are seeing a decline in production in August as compared to the average of the base year. Because base year is not just 1 month, base year is a complete
Is the full
month.
year.
So from April of 2011 to March 2012, that constitutes the base year.
Right.
So we take the average of production of that and we compare with the August 2023.
I see.
And then we identify those items where the August 23 number is lower than the average production that we saw in the base year.
In 2011-12.
2011-12. So that's, more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, right. So now could you tell us some of the items that actually, according to the data, that we are producing less of than in 2011?
So out of 405 items, 40% of the items reported lower production
Ouch.
in August as compared to the average of the base year of 2011-12.
Wow.
So 162 items have production which is lower as compared to the average of the base year.
Right.
Now, the pace of decline, how much it has declined as compared to the base year, that is also different. There are some items where the decline is just like 2 to 3%. And there are some items where the decline is almost 79% as compared to the base year average.
What would some of those be?
So some of those are bed linen.
Okay.
Some of the items in the textile segment, they have reported a production which is much lower of the order. The decline is between 70 to 80% as compared to the base year average.
Right.
But then there are certain other items also, like which we use very commonly, as you pointed out at the beginning of the episode, that toothpaste, TV sets, they are also showing a decline in production as compared to the base year. Bottled water, these are some of the items where the decline is, we see a perceptible decline as compared to the base year. Now, before we make any inferences from this, what is important is to also analyze the nature of these items. Nature of these items means that some of these items are value-based.
Right.
Some of these items are volume-based in the sense that they are expressed in physical units. They are expressed in tons. And there are some items which are expressed in rupee terms.
Right.
Now, those items that are expressed in rupee terms, they are influenced by inflation.
Of course.
So when we make any inference about whether the production has declined or not, a meaningful first step is to first categorize the items into volume-based and value-based.
Right.
And see, because the value-based items are unduly impacted when there is deflation. And we have seen that WPI, the wholesale price index, has been contracting over the last so many months.
Now I think 6 months it's been negative.
More than 6 months.
More than
so,
6 months, right.
So when we see the rupee value, the variable is expressed in terms of the price, and that price is declining, then the nominal value will also go down.
No, of course.
So that is also one thing that we need to understand before we make any assessment or judgments about the production data. So that is one. And why it is important is because out of 405 items in the manufacturing sector, 109 items are value based. So it's not that it's just a very small proportion of the manufacturing basket.
Right.
So value based items account for a substantial proportion of the manufacturing basket. So we need to see which of the categories are value based and where is the decline coming in pricing.
Right.
It's primarily coming from value based, or is it coming from volume based? Because in each component also there is a mix. Like in chemicals and chemical products, there are some items which are expressed in volume terms, there are some items that are expressed in value terms.
Right.
There are others like basic metals like steel, copper. These are all where it is expressed in physical terms. So it's very important to analyze the anatomy of the IIP series, see what are value based, what are volume based, and then identifying the items that are volume based.
Because that is what is comparable.
That is what is comparable, and that is what is something which is reporting where there is an actual decline in production. If there is substantially, the items that are reporting a decline are value based, that means they are influenced by prices also. By
the inflation level.
Yeah,
and
so that caveat must be there when we make any assessment about the production data.
Okay, so now you've explained how you did it, but does it really make sense that things like toothpaste and TVs that we're producing less now than before? Because I don't think it's as if we've suddenly switched to only imports.
Yeah. So that leads us to some of the other possible reasons for the slowdown. So there are some usual suspects like export slowdown. There are other reasons like, there is a category like paper and paper products. It is understandable that these products have become obsolete and therefore there is a decline in production, particularly after COVID. We are digitizing. And after COVID, there's a greater renewed push to digitization, and therefore paper and paper products production has gone down even below the base year. That is understandable. But things like toothpaste, TV sets, bed linen, beer, bottled water, these are some of the items where if you see a decline in production even below the base year, it requires a careful monitoring of the data collection methodology.
Right.
Is it that some of the production units, because if you look at the IIP manual, what are the agencies doing? They have identified certain production units, they have identified certain factories, and they are collecting data from them.
Right.
Maybe some of the production units have shut down. Maybe some of the production units have shifted to another line of business. So all these adjustments,
possible, yes.
So and this happens. So all these adjustments need to be taken care of, not only in the current year, the year in which we are collecting the data, but way back in the base year also.
Right.
Then it will make things more comparable. And the same issues that apply to CPI, we've been talking about updation of the base year, the weights, the basket. Maybe it's time to have the same conversation for the IIP basket also.
Right. So before 2011-12, what was the base year?
2004-5.
So that was a quicker update. From 2004-5 they went to 2011-12, but since then it has not been updated.
And there was quite substantial changes. When we look at the manual from 2004-5 to 11-12, a lot of items were dropped, a lot of items were added, weights were changed, the weight of electricity was reduced, the weight of manufacturing was increased. So all these structural changes did happen in the IIP series. So maybe when you look at such kind of items which are of common use, where the demand is inelastic, then it requires a careful scrutiny of the data and how the data collection methodology. Maybe it's time to review that process itself.
Absolutely. And now the topic actually has generated quite a few questions from the audience. So I'll get to them. Now, Vinayak asks that the unexpected double-digit rise in IIP coupled with a fall in the inflation numbers reflects very positively on the Indian economy. Now, looking ahead, do you expect a rate cut in the medium term, or like to give a further boost to the economy? And also, what's your view on the rural economy, given that the monsoon's been kind of erratic?
So IIP we have spoken about, yes, it's a double-digit growth, but when we delve deeper, there are these sectoral variations. So the headline number masks the peculiarities that we are seeing within the sector. And also in CPI, yes, CPI inflation fell to 5%, but then we are seeing there are fresh headwinds to inflation.
As we've talked about before.
We have talked about the escalation of conflict in the Middle East could lead to higher oil prices, and that will have an impact on inflation. And therefore, the recent monetary policy by RBI was very hawkish. Though they did not raise the interest rate, they were very sure that, the inflation target is 4% and not 2 to 6%.
Yes.
So they will not be satisfied if inflation falls to 5%. They would like it to fall to 4%. So as of now, the hope of rate cut has been, I think that period of when the rate cut will happen has been extended further. I think it won't happen this year, maybe second half of next year.
Right. And now Saurabh asks that again, industrial output is increasing, but is it resulting in gainful employment for large sections of society?
Yeah, that's a very nuanced question, because when production is rising, and also if we look at the employment numbers from the NSSO, the National Sample Survey Office, the PLFS estimates of employment, we do see that unemployment rate has been declining progressively for both urban and rural. But what is also important is to look at the structure of employment, because what's happening is that the nature of employment has shifted towards self-employment. We are not seeing a meaningful gain in wage employment or regular salaried jobs. Rather, we are seeing employment in self-employment, and regular jobs are not increasing. So that is something that needs to be analyzed along with just looking at the headline employment numbers.
Okay. And now Sankalp asks that, as per the reports, the chief drivers of growth in the manufacturing sector this time were steel, cement, and transport equipment. And he says that all of these are related to the infrastructure sector and capital goods sector. So he says it appears firms are preparing for a long-term demand surge. What is driving these positive forecasts?
There are two things. One is the government's infra push, and that we are seeing. It is reflecting in data. We have seen the GDP number that came out for the first quarter, saw a GFCF, the gross fixed capital formation growth of 8%. The other is also real estate. We are seeing a resurgence in real estate demand, and that is driving the demand for items like steel, cement. We are seeing that the inventory of real estate is going down. The demand is increasing, not only at the higher end but also at the medium end. The regulations have been eased, and also we discussed in one of the episodes, we spoke about the household saving, that household financial savings are going down but household physical savings are rising. That means people are investing in real estate. So I think a combination of both these factors, infra push as well as the robust performance of the real estate sector, is driving the growth of these items, the infrastructure and construction sector.
Right. And now you mentioned real estate. And so Aditya has a question to do with real estate, but not ours, but China's. So with China's economy not doing well thanks to its real estate sector, do you think it's time to introduce some path-breaking reforms in India, like maybe single window clearance, so India can become the next manufacturing hub?
Absolutely. Regardless of what happens in China, the policy push within to improve manufacturing sector should involve reforms like single window clearance, liberalization of FDI, not only in terms of caps but also in terms of processes, fostering innovation. So yes, all these reforms are needed. Also, review of the production-linked incentive schemes that we've spoken about earlier, that it has done well for some of the sectors, it has not done well for some of the sectors. Is it time to review these sectors and the schemes so to further improve the manufacturing competitiveness? So yes, all these reforms are needed so that we are able to take advantage of the China Plus One strategy, which other countries are taking, and we should also initiate these reforms to take advantage.
Right. So there you go. I mean, the latest IIP data for August, if you compare it to last year, things are looking great. We're at double-digit growth. And even if you compare to the previous month, it is an increase over the previous month as well. But if you look longer, if you look deeper, if you look towards the base year of 2011-12, a lot of the data shows that quite a lot of our output seems to be below the 2011-12 level. Now, in some cases, this might make sense. Like if you're looking at paper, then the increasing digitization might mean that yes, we're manufacturing less paper. But there are other sectors like TVs and toothpaste and bottled water and beer, where the production being lower than 2011-12 just doesn't make sense. So this is something that the government needs to look at and see why the IIP is reporting this kind of really funny data. So that's what we have for you in this episode. This is what the insights the data has for you. Thank you so much for watching.